How important is it for a designer? I guess depending on the product that they're working on, but for a designer, let's say working on, in this case, like in, let's say, an application or something like that. Uh, is it really critical for them to know coding, to learn how to know how to do some front end design?
Um, it depends.
Okay.
I think so. Not at a level as you get more senior. I think yes, because that creates more leverage, right? When you think about why do I get this senior role, I start out as a maybe an associate product designer, and I have a certain set of responsibilities, and then I get promoted to like regular product designer, and then I get promoted to senior product designer. What does that mean? Like, why would I
Right.
get those promotions? Is it just because I have better taste than the people I work with? Is it just because I have better soft skills, and I'm
Yeah.
able to communicate? Is it this like terrifying realm for a lot of designers where it's like, oh no, you're going down a management track, and that's how you get seniority, and that's the only way to progress?
Right.
And I tend to think of those skills as just creating more and more leverage as a designer. So
Yeah.
if I took a career path of I graduate Flatiron School, what I'm coming out with is a really, really solid foundation around understanding both how user research flows into UX design, which flows into getting into like that screen level kind of interaction UI design, which flows into kind of the prototyping aspect. And so I don't think if you're playing those roles at a junior level, you're getting a lot of work kind of given to you.
Yeah.
You're not coming up with your own work.
Right.
Someone's saying, hey, can you go look at these three screens in this application? We have a conversion problem here, or nobody's doing this thing, or we've built this feature and nobody seems to be interacting with it. And these are our hypotheses as to why. Here's the rough thing we'd like to kind of see done there. And so then you're basically helping to show what we intend to make, which is my favorite definition of design by far. It's a fourth grader's version of Don Norman's quote, which is "Design is the rendering of intent."
Mm.
Basically, that just means it's a just designer's job is just to show what the heck we think we should make.
Right.
And so when you're super junior, you're showing what they think we should make, or my boss thinks we should make, and you're helping
Right.
us see that.
Right.
As you get more senior, you're able to sort of suggest what you think we
Right.
should make. And when we're talking about digital products, the better handle you have on front end technology, for example, what that means is it increases your vocabulary. There's this quote, maybe from the Dalai Lama or something. I heard it from Brene Brown, not personally, on her podcast. Brene,
Yeah.
the
The goat.
bless Brene,
Yeah.
uh, but she was like the limits of your language are the limits of your universe, and that made so much sense to me because what we're talking about here is, if not the ability to dig in and be productive in code, at least the ability to inspect and be conversant. Because then what you have is you can name that thing. Here's a really good example. I interviewed a designer once, and this is back when I was doing design exercises. I don't do those anymore, but we did a design exercise. She created this amazing sort of it was awesome. She made this prototype, came up with a whole product on her own. And then we were talking through some of the UI, and she had designed this sort of, you had to pick one. It was a list of things, and it was in a form, and you could just pick one. And then you hit submit. And she designed it with checkboxes, and then had some UI like copy around it that said just select one. And if you tried to select another, there'd be like an error state. But all she needed to know was that a radio button is a thing. All you need to know is that there's the radio, but that's the name for when it's a little circle, not a check.
Ah,
And
okay.
so when that means it's a binary choice, you can
Right.
only pick, that's a baked in thing to HTML.
Right.
And so she'd done a ton of work, right? Like trying to craft the user experience because of course she's seen a radio button before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like she's a 20 something year old woman working in tech. She has seen a radio button, but she just didn't have the vocabulary.
Right.
And so the radio button did not exist in her mindset as a solution because she just didn't have that word.
Wow.
As you get deeper into tech, you talk with engineers, you learn the words for these things. A really good example is when you're working at, it's good. It's another example when you're working at more of like a UX level and not a UI level. let's say we're not doing the UI design here. We're just getting into like, what should the pages be? And we're trying to decide on some information architecture for this application or just this screen, which information architecture is just information hierarchy. Essentially, it is how are we organizing the content to help you move through this application sensibly. I was working on a Rails app with some people, and so because I've developed Rails applications before, I know like the words for what those things are. I
Right.
know the difference between a show page and an index page, and what some of the fundamental frame, like kind of scaffolding languages in that framework.
Yeah.
And so when I write my project pitch, or when I'm kind of trying to talk about my solution idea,
Yeah.
I can say simple things that immediately translate to an engineer as like a ticket, right? Like I could say here, basically, we're working on a new student roster right now. So I'm calling the student roster in Rails terms, just the index. It is the index of all of your students. And when you click on a student, you go to their show page. That's like a Rails thing. So engineer knows immediately, oh, cool. I'm getting sort of in my mind a decent picture of how on the back end this kind of fits together.
Yeah.
And what it does for you as a designer is you also sort of get a sense of what things are baked in to different frameworks, which helps you understand level of effort around your own designs. Similarly, like on the UI side, Drew, being a super duper capable front end engineer, our staff designer, he's designed our whole design system in Figma using auto layout, so it completely mimics Flexbox. So that when he gives designs to engineers to finish out, or he doesn't have time to code it himself, they understand exactly how it should,
Yeah.
flip for mobile, how exactly this thing works if that content's not there, how things grow and snap depending on variable bits of information. Brand new designers out of a boot camp are probably not going to do
Yeah.
that, depending on the boot camp,
Right.
right? Like if it's a front end UI, totally, that's actually all you'll be able to do probably.
Right.
But it's a piece of leverage. And so as you grow in your design career, or as I have at least,
Yeah.
I've just focused on areas of leverage that are interesting to me and just gotten better and better at those things. And then the things that I know I just need to not lose sight of, I like dip back into once or twice a year.
Right.
So I don't do a ton of coding anymore. I like it. I think it's interesting, but I'm so slow at it. And there's so many people here that are so much better at it than I am. I just stay out of the weeds and
Yeah.
instead try and stay pretty abstract with the way I talk about those things.